Hey, this worked.
Hey.
Hi, I'm
I always
getting all
like,
these messages that a bunch of things that I'm going on live, but I guess I don't know. It's working.
yeah, it's working.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I
All
can.
right. So we have a snow day here today. So all my kids are home. Hopefully there's no yelling or screaming, and we're all
Yeah,
good.
I hear you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. We do not have a snow day in North Carolina, but we've definitely had cold weather days and inconsistencies of schedule. So I understand.
Do you feel like the cold weather though? They're a little bit of like babies down there because you're from New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So like, or do you not want to say it?
So we have, I have this discussion with my kids all the time.
Uh-oh. Technical difficulty. Why? Try again. Thanks for your patience ahead of time. I don't know what
I
happened.
don't know what happened.
Okay.
I heard myself talking. I think I was just talking about my kids and I having this discussion all the time about, the people tolerating cold weather down here. And what I like to tell my kids is that people who are from here do not have the same tolerance because their bodies are just not used to it. So their perception of cold is different. So, yeah, so, and there's a lot of people, like people who are from North Carolina do not have proper winter weather, or I'm sorry, proper winter weather
Yeah.
clothing. So it's truly an issue. But I've found that my blood is, I think, thinning, and I'm sitting here cold, and it's significantly warmer here than it is up by you.
Oh, what's the temperature there?
I don't know. It's in the 40s today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's like woohoo.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it hasn't really been super cold. I mean, not like it's been in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely we have some colder days.
Yeah.
So first, thank you to everybody who's watching, and thank you to everybody who will watch the replay. First, I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist.
So I don't know if you introduced me by
I
name.
didn't. You can. I left out the Goldberg because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, well, that's a confusing thing. So professionally as an artist, I've always gone by Jennie Traill Schaeffer, and Traill is the namesake of my business, which is the umbrella under which I've operated as an artist, as a teacher, and as a gallery owner. So Traill is actually my middle name, and Schaeffer is my maiden name. My married name is Schaeffer Goldberg.
Okay. I was hoping that I wasn't getting it wrong when I put it all out there. I was like, oh no, should I add it?
No,
I don't know. Okay.
that's a whole other story. But anyway, so I've been an artist really my whole life. Right, I was supported in coloring with crayons and grew up in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is where Crayola crayons come from. And I, of course, ended up interning there when I was in college. I also worked at the art store as a gift shop for a while when Crayola became an experience, which it wasn't before, I think, 1996. So I also grew up in a family of artists. My mom was a metalsmith, and my dad plays the guitar as a hobby. But there's a lot of musicians and artists in my family. So I've always been an artist and went to school for art education and painting. I did a dual major in both at Syracuse, and left school feeling like I needed to get a job. And that's a simplification because I really felt compelled to change the world through art education. That was, that was my passion. But I was from the get-go told by professors, oh, you shouldn't teach, you need to be a painter. And, at that point in time and up in upstate New York, I did not feel that I had any of the skills to go out and be a full-time artist. I had no idea. So teaching was, the path. And after I was in public education for a couple of years, I ended up in an art store for a few years and then started my business in 2005 as a professional artist.
Okay, so I've got to do the math on that. So that you're almost at 20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And now to ask quite a little follow-up question there, do you feel like you weren't prepared to be a painter because the school had kind of dropped the ball on that?
So when I started studying there, so a couple of complications. I think when I started studying there, and I initially picked a major as art education, and then you had to concentrate in a fine art. So I concentrated in painting. So initially it was not a dual major. It was just art ed with a concentration in painting. But my painting professors really felt I needed to be a full painting major. So I petitioned the school to let me do that, and they granted it, but it also meant that I stayed for an extra semester so that I could fit in student teaching.
Okay.
And sometime during my schooling at Syracuse, they took out they had a class on materials, which went by the wayside. And I think there was some other class. It might have been something about the business of art, but it also went by the wayside. And coincidentally, I was friends with a lot of illustration majors, and I know that you're close with Megan Carty, and she's been on with your art chats. And she and I didn't know each other at Syracuse, but we were there at the same time and have mutual friends. I think she was in illustration, or she was in a different department, and got more of the business support that I, as a painting major, did not have. So
Okay. Yeah. And that's interesting because I don't think that's just a Syracuse issue. I think that's an all-around issue that over the past few years with Instagram has been kind of starting to be remedied. But us as artists, even painters, need that business education, because if not, then where are we?
Yep.
Like, we still need to sell something. We still need to. It's a product, not to, but it is something that it's not just in this vacuum where, oh, this magical collector fairy comes along and just buys it. So if anybody is in education, especially higher education, take that into consideration that, maybe we don't need algebra. Maybe we need business classes. That was always my thing. I was a fine art major, my 1 year stint in school, and it was, okay, you need algebra 1 and 2. I was like, I already barely passed in high school. Why are you making me do this again? Like,
right. Well,
give me like how to stretch a canvas 101 and how to balance my accounts.
Right.
Give me something useful.
Yeah. And I think that, interestingly, I went to a private school. So because it was private and because of the way they structured their curriculum, I didn't have to take math in college. So
Okay.
I did have maybe more of the liberal arts and more fine arts. But even in that, there still wasn't the interest at that time to, offer us those kinds of classes.
Well, and now with Instagram and social media and the internet, that whole business itself has changed all around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those things would have needed to be updated and all of that stuff anyway. So thank you for the intro.
Yeah.
You moved from New Jersey to Durham, North Carolina. Can you tell us what it's been like moving yourself there as an artist, and how you've kind of found the art world there and how you're incorporating with that?
Yeah. So moving is not for the faint of heart. And I certainly did not expect it to be easy. But I do think that I expected it to be easier than it was. And I think what made it challenging were a set of circumstances that are specific to myself and my family. We relocated during the pandemic, so it was 2021, And it was like the summer, so things were starting to open up. So it was like feeling like the pandemic maybe was starting to like wind down. I don't know. Um, so we decided to make this move really quickly without, this was not an intention, this was more out of necessity, for a variety of reasons. So we we came down here in March of 2021, decided that we wanted to, pull the trigger and put the house up for sale. And I think the house sold, I don't know, end of April, early May. And then we moved down here end of June. Um, Bought our house remotely, which is also not for the faint of heart. And
You were very brave during
well,
all of this.
I mean, we didn't really, it was a terrible housing market. And everybody said to us, well, aren't you going to rent for a period of time and get familiar with the place?
But you
And I,
already had sold your house.
we had already sold our house. I could not
Taxes on that issue, if you had just decided to rent, would have been exorbitant.
well, and just the idea of having to then move twice.
Yeah.
I couldn't fathom that. And lots of people do that. And there are many reasons that makes sense, but we didn't do that. We bought this house sight unseen. And then when we relocated, I just imagined, well, I'm a working artist. Things are virtual. I can just pick up and move and continue, and I'll maintain some clients and I'll, create new ones. I have to say that the saving grace of this relocation was me joining a global network, what was the Artist Mother Network at the time,
Okay.
which was a group of artist mothers run under the auspices of the Artist Mother podcast.
Okay.
And I don't know how I found it. I got connected to it. And through that, I started dialoguing with people who, as it turns out, there were people down here as part of that network. And one of the women, her name is Jean Gray Mose. She was actually starting at the time like an in-person, like face-to-face group of artist mothers in the Triangle.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like I somehow connected with her. She told me about it. I had a face-to-face with her. And then, little by little, I started meeting other artist mothers who are down in this area. That network has now merged into a larger global network called the Thrive Together Network, and I'm still a member of that. And now I've met not just artist mothers, but women identifying artists. So that virtual network has allowed me to develop ties here that just would have been so much harder, to discover. And then through all that time, briefly, we ended up finding out that I wasn't feeling well. I had mold illness, which we then had our house tested, which we then found mold in our HVAC system, which we would not have known, even if we had been down here, which then sent us into like almost a year-long pursuit of me healing, maybe 2 years,
Okay.
packing up my studio twice, gutting and doing mold remediation. So it was the past 2 years, I've been very partially engaged in making art.
Oh.
So it was back in, I guess, end of July, early August of 2023 that everything was done. I was starting to feel better, and I started working.
Well, and so that's just a lot on top of your already big move. So that's definitely a lot for you.
Yeah.
What did you feel like at that point? You were okay with taking that time for yourself to heal, or was it a struggle to not be making art for you?
I think it's both. I think, I ebb and flow between acceptance and, out of a great need. I mean, I was like, there were times I was incapacitated and couldn't get off the couch. So when you're in that place, you really have to accept where you are and let go of, a lot of responsibilities and a lot of desires or expectations. So, I could very easily go into that place when I was like completely laid up. I think the harder times were when I was starting to feel a little bit better. And I always liken this to when you're pregnant. I think there's a lot, I think it's a really good metaphor for a lot of different struggles we have at different points in our life when you're growing and your body's changing and you think you can continue doing the things you could do before, but you don't know until you actually hit that wall of, oh, that was too much. Like, after. So,
For sure.
yeah, so I think that I've struggled with that, with not ever, with, I'm a driven person. I want to say I'm a high achiever, but I really have had to work on, it's a constant practice,
Yeah.
right, of acceptance and letting go.
Has that experience changed your process in any way? How quickly you do things? How has it slowed you down? Has it sped you up? Has it
I mean,
anything?
I had to slow down, right? And I don't think I've ever been, I wouldn't say that I'm a fast painter. That's my paintings are very layered and worked up over time. So I'll never say I'm fast. But I think where I am now is actually when January hit, I was still sort of feeling like I had taken 2 weeks off because we travel to see family.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were readjusting to finals week for my high schooler and just going back to school and then no school because of freezing cold temperatures. And still not being where I wanted to be, but I was gifted a new sketchbook for Christmas from my family. And it's a beautiful sketchbook. It's bound with leather and it's embossed with a quote. It's handmade paper. I'm not even sure what the paper is per se, but something like that I would typically set aside and say, well, I have other sketchbooks that I'm working on that I need to finish those first before I explore that. And instead, I decided to just sort of jump on this and explore a daily practice, giving myself a 10-minute minimum to hit every day in that sketchbook. So that practice is, I've met it every day but one. And that's where I've given myself the grace to say, okay, that particular day, I couldn't manage it in my day, and that's okay. So I think there was one drawing that I started one day and then I finished it the next day. So it's really two drawings, but it's just layered. And I just said, okay, this is day one and day two, and in one sketch. And that book has really allowed me to become a little more playful with my work, and I'm just not setting expectations for subject matter, for materials, medium. I'm just sitting down with it every day and kind of looking at it with where I am at that moment and saying, okay, what is coming to me? What material am I craving? And then I'm just working through it.
And so do you, we've been friends for a long time, so I know you, but I know everybody else does not necessarily have the same insight. Do you see yourself as kind of struggling with that type A person when I'm an artist? Because I feel like I do struggle. Like, I'm pretty regimented and organized and type A because I have to be because of my diabetes. So it's like when it comes to art, I have to change that, and sometimes it's difficult. Yeah. So, is this helping you kind of with that?
I think so. Yeah, it's definitely making me more free. And I think playful is the best word to describe it, because I want to say that in my work over the past year, while it's been minimal, it's actually been more work last year than I did the year prior. And my work is changing with the subject matter of the chairs that I've been exploring. And I feel like there's going to be an opening up with those. I just went through, it was like an 8-week critique group. And one of my questions, that I wanted to, beg of the visiting artists was, should I stick to watercolor? Should I stick to oil? What direction should I be going in? And what surface should I be working on? And and what she said to me was, don't limit yourself. Just keep working in both and maybe explore how the two can intersect together. And I haven't gotten to that place yet, but it just it felt freeing to have somebody else say, just keep going and and just keep playing. And I think that the struggle comes in, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think the struggle then comes in with, because my time is limited and I'm still having many distractions. I'm an advocate for my oldest son, and there's still a lot of need there. So my time in the studio is often short, even though I'm physically in here, but
Yeah.
the time thing is limited.
And I think too, I totally hear what you're saying there. I think another thing is that Instagram in particular drives home that you need to stay in your lane. It has to all look the same. It has to be branded. Don't go exploring too much, because then you might, lose those people that like your work. And I think even galleries can do this too. It's like, oh well, this sells. It's like, yeah, but I want to explore something else over here. Back in the day, Picasso was like, I'm going to do everything blue and you're going to listen to me because I don't want to do the other thing anymore. I'm going to do blue now. And now I think this idea of branding has really kind of taken over people's creativity a little bit, and it makes it a little, I know I struggle with it. So maybe that's something that is also, one, we're mothers, we have limited time, so we don't want to go in there like, no, we deserve to play, we deserve to be creative, but that mindset is very hard to change, because in order for us to feel it's worthy time and valued time, we want something at the end of it,
Right.
or we want to finish at least another part of the process. And when you stick to that idea of branding or staying with a certain style or being known for something, it makes it easier to go, okay, I know what I'm going to do when I go into the studio, but it doesn't help with the creative side at all. It doesn't help. And so then what happens? Then it becomes a chore. It becomes a thing that's not really helping your nervous system anymore. It becomes something that's a little bit hard to do. So I like how somebody gave you the permission
Yeah.
to explore, because a lot of times we're not getting
Yeah.
that permission case. And so that's a really good takeaway there. Now, I have always been a big fan of your pet portraits. So I really want to ask you about your process with this, especially, I mean, your drawings, your paintings. Like, I don't even know which one I like more. We have 2 new
You
dogs.
too?
Yeah.
Oh, I only knew about the one.
Yeah, we got another one in August, because they are Gracie, who was the first one we got. She was a little like anxious, she just was more anxious when we left. She's still an anxious dog. She's like, she must be a herding dog. She just does all those kinds of maneuvers. So we got another, she was probably about 4 or 5 months old when we got her. We rescued another puppy. And they're really good together, and they're totally different dogs, but yeah, so now we have 2. So it's a bit wild. But yeah, so what can you share a little bit about your process there, how you find the pet or the animal, because you don't just do dogs, right? Do you do cats as well, or you just lean on
Well,
dogs?
I don't promote cats.
Okay. So just dogs.
I'm definitely a dog lover. And I also, my husband is highly allergic to cats. So we have, he can walk into a house with cats and like instantly, like he knows they're there. And he either has to take a Benadryl and knock himself out, or like stay outside. It is really tough. But I will say I've been able to be around cats, and I enjoy petting a cat when they're super sweet and want to engage. So I've met a few cats that are adorable. I have done one cat drawing. I think I was commissioned gosh, I don't remember if it was here that it actually may have been here for a New Jersey client. I can't
Okay.
remember. But I just I posted a portrait that I did in December for a very long time client who I taught her son for many years in New Jersey, and then she's commissioned pieces over the years and purchased pieces. So she commissioned a piece, an oil painting of her daughter's dog for Christmas. And we were just messaging back and forth like a week ago. And she's like, so out of curiosity, do you do cats? And she said, or are you like, allergic to them or something? I forget what she said, but I said, I'll entertain it. I'll certainly, if somebody is very interested and wants me to explore a cat, I will explore a cat.
Okay.
So yes. So your other question was
So
more about
what's the process for you? How do you have people just send you a bunch of photographs in order to kind of get the personality of the animal or the dog?
yeah.
How does that work? How long is your process? Like, what's the
There's that time question again. So first, I do the mini dog portraits, which are drawn in graphite. So I have those as an offering, which are 5x7, and those come in a matted. It's a double mounted mat. It's a double window mat.
okay.
So that the piece can be framed immediately. And then I do oil portraits, which come in a range of sizes. Sky's the limit. The biggest I've done is probably, I'm not sure dimensionally if 24 by 24 is bigger than 16 by 20, but I've worked in both of those sizes.
Okay.
Those are the largest I've gone. But this other portrait I did was a 5x7, on panel. So yeah, generally, so I have, like, on my website, you can order portraits in standard sizes, like just pay for it, order it, send me some pictures via email. I probably need to refine my forms a little bit more, because what I always find myself asking, which is not sort of standard on my form, is what is the breed? What are the names of the dogs? And I like to know more about anything with their personality. But typically what ends up happening, people will send me a handful of photos, maybe 3 photos, for example. And generally speaking, most often, there's always one photo that I tend to just off the bat not navigate. What's the word I want to say? that I'm just pulled
Yeah.
towards. And it might be, sometimes it has to do with the quality of the photo. If I'm getting blurry photos, or they're very far away, it's very hard, or the lighting's poor, it's very hard to judge the details of the dog, and really, it's hard not to make things up. So, so quality of photo is important, as well as just having really good, it capture the personality of the dog. And actually, one I did recently was for an artist friend in Pittsburgh, and she sent me two pictures of her dog. This was a drawing I did in November, I think it was, and her dog was some kind of border collie mix, very furry dog, similar to the one I recently did. But she sent me one photo with the tongue hanging out, and then there was another photo where the dog looked much more austere. And I simply asked her, it was a gift for her husband,
Okay.
and I said, when you think of your dog, which of those photos really strikes more meaning to you? And she said, oh, the one with the tongue. So it was like, I love, I think I did a dachshund a few years ago. Maybe it was more like 10 years ago, with the tongue hanging out. It's just a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah. And that's so it's not just, oh, let me draw a picture of your dog. It's like there are so many aspects to that. You've got to get to know the client, you've got to get to know the dog, and or else that won't be translated properly.
And I find and I've written this as I'm working on pieces, because in particular, when I'm working with constrained sizes, I'll do, if I'm working on a larger painting, I will provide 3 thumbnails to my client and say, these are the 3 different compositions. And then I also, for paintings, if you're working beyond, standard dimensions and people are wanting something more custom, then we go back and forth. They pay a deposit. We work out. Have a written contract that I have my client sign, with payment, portions. And what I've also done in some cases, because which allows for me to be a little more creative with the end result, is that if somebody's thinking about a price point within a certain dimension, let's say, I can't think of a price relative to dimension off the top of my head, but let's just say they're thinking a 24 by 24, whatever price point that is. And what I will often say is, so why don't I explore some different dimensions, or profiles. So maybe I'll do like a portrait, maybe I'll do a horizontal, and then maybe I'll do a square. And then they can kind of pick within that price point, but a dimension that works within that price point. And then sometimes I've had clients who maybe they end up wanting to go a little bit bigger. And I'll always say to people, here's your base, here's your starting, but if you are feeling like you want to go bigger, then we can always adjust, the price point during the midst of the commission.
Okay. Okay. Has there ever been, like, what's the biggest challenge when doing a custom pet portrait, do you feel? What do you feel is like the biggest challenge that you try to mitigate or you've learned to mitigate over the years?
I think a few things. I have to work with people that understand that my style is my style. I think that, there have been people that have wanted things maybe more realistic. I would say I'm a realist painter, but I am not photorealist.
Yeah.
There's an expressive quality to the handling of my paint that I'm not going to let go of. Yeah. Even though I still feel compelled with the amount of details. Like they're highly detailed, but they're also expressive at the same time. So I think that balance and just really just standing firm in the way I work and communicating that to my clients so that we're on the same page. I think at times I have been interested in leaving pieces a little less finished. I'm highly influenced in all of my work by Alice Neal. And I wouldn't say that my pet portraits are of Alice Neal quality per se, but they're
I would a little bit, now that you say that. I see a little bit of it, especially in the most recent one. Yeah, and I don't see it.
In that one, there was a stage where a bunch of people are like, oh, I really like the purple. I'm like, oh gosh, should I leave that background? And I end up sort of going beyond where maybe I could have left it. And I have had a few clients who have given me that creative license, where I have shared something at a certain, this is now. How do you feel? And most of my clients will want me to push it further. But I've had a few who are really like, yes, leave it. So that's just sort of like a balance where I am. And maybe I'll get to a place where maybe my portraits will become looser at some point, and then I'll have to, again, sort of reset the expectation that this is where my work is now.
And I love that too. I love that some of the collectors are like, leave it, and then some like that's the commission process. It's not for you. It's not what you want to do. You are working with somebody else, and it's great that you give them that option at that point. And also another thing is, like, I notice even like with drawings, when there's a little bit of that, portrait portrait or pet portrait that's a little just not finished, I love that. Maybe it's an artist thing. I don't know. I just really love that, like, oh, you see like some of the master sketchbooks and they're just, it's just almost done. Like there's just a little bit that they didn't finish and it's like, okay, great. Like that to me is the beauty of those. And so I'm trying to think if I remember correctly. Do you do that with some of your pencil drawings of pets? Do you kind
Yeah,
of
well,
leave a little bit?
there's no background in most of them. It's the
Okay.
face typically. Maybe there's some element of the body, but I will often like add the suggestion of something moving into something else
Yeah.
and leaving, unfinished.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So kudos to all of your clients that love that too. Um, Now the last thing I know you wanted to talk about your chairs.
Yes.
I forgot the title that you. I'm a terrible host. I
No,
forgot the title.
it's fine.
So can you go into that a little bit and how that started and where you're
Yeah.
going with that?
So my non-commissioned work, I will call it. I don't know how else to define it, but
You said take a seat. I
yeah,
remember.
it's called Take a Seat. Yeah, it's a series called Take a Seat, which focuses on chairs as the leading role, I'll say, in the painting. And it stemmed out of an original sort of series, an umbrella series called Teascapes, which I started around 2017, 2018. And those were strictly watercolor, working with image transfers of tea packaging in landscapes, and it was tied to creating more spaciousness in my work, spaciousness in my brain, and exploring environments where I felt spacious and mindful. And over time, those teascapes, and actually even some earlier teascapes, had chairs set in the landscape. So as I don't want to say I've exhausted the Teascape series. I'm not sure if I have or have not, but chairs started becoming the main element of the painting. So I started really labeling the series as Take a Seat, which came directly out of a meditation practice that I started probably around the same time that I started the Teascapes. I happened to get on a summit, a meditation summit that I found through something. And maybe it was actually, I had read Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. That's what it was. And somehow he was a guest on this summit. And I did this meditation summit. And I was just so taken by him and his accessibility to meditation, which, I didn't understand what it was. Um, and eventually I actually started taking in-person classes in Maplewood, New Jersey with a teacher, Jean Vetrano. And she very often at the beginning of our sessions would say that she would invite us to take a seat. And that just, it was like a repeated invitation. And the chairs over time, so they first just sort of sat in the landscape as literally an invitation to be in this space. And, I didn't know how people would read that, but I have heard countless reactions from people seeing my work that they do get that. And it's really cool when people get your work, and it connects to them in that way. So then over time, the chairs, I've started adding tethers in, and sort of suspending them either in the sky or in trees. And so I'm exploring this idea of the dichotomy between having stability when there is instability, or comfort in discomfort, or ease when there is
Are,
dis-ease. So it's a very.
are they still in the landscape or are they just by themselves?
So I've done some that are just that are by themselves, very
Okay.
small studies for watercolors. Now that I'm working in oils, they have been in the landscape. They still are in the landscape, but I just started a very small painting just to get my oil brushes working again over the break, since the break. And it's just a study, so it's a solo chair in an undefined space.
Okay. And with that, where do you see that go? Is it just kind of for you, or do you see it going in a certain direction? Like, do you have any goals for that? Uncommissioned.
Sort of. I think that's in process. I there's a lot of work. I don't know if it's fully in fruition. I do have a large panel gessoed that's 2 by 4 feet, and I have not worked that large in quite some time. That's going to be the next piece that I'm working on, and I'm envisioning. I have a sketch for it, so I'm envisioning several chairs being sort of dropped into a circular field.
Okay.
So that's my next piece to work on, and I'm hoping I would like to exhibit these pieces. I have not exhibited any of this body of work together, and I wouldn't say that it's a complete body of work yet. I have notions in my mind about shows with other artists with chairs. I don't know, this idea of curation, which I, have 5 years of experience doing when I had my gallery. I don't know. I'm at this sort of point where, I've showed in my own space. I've had success selling on my own. Online sales have not been great for me. And I have not been able to do outdoor shows as much as possible. So I think I'm at that sort of new plateau or precipice of seeking shows in spaces and how to go about, connecting with other artists that share my vision.
That seems like a good direction to go. I like that direction. And you have, like you said, you have that curatorial experience behind you. You kind of have like the whole gamut, I feel like. You've been, you're an artist, you've run your own gallery, you've taught, you've just, I feel like you kind of have done a lot of work in all of the fields. So I appreciate you coming forward with all of that great knowledge. Is there anything else that you would like to say or let other creatives know going forward?
Oh gosh, that's heavy. I don't think that was on my list of questions.
No, it wasn't. It's just a throw that one at you.
I think, I don't know, maybe I can sum it up into 3 things. We'll see if I can do that. I have learned over the years that community and connection to other artists is so very important to growth and continuity. And I have had to find community in different creative ways. And certainly leaving my, known community of origin in the Northeast really propelled me into like, how am I gonna meet people? And it's not always perfect. And I think I'm a little bit in a rut right now where I've been very sort of isolated again, and I need to get myself out. But it's a constant, like, you need to push yourself beyond your comfort zone to go and meet other artists and to connect with gallery owners and potential buyers. If you are holed up in your studio, you're not going to go forward. So there's that message. I think, what was the other message? I think the other message is sort of a combined one, which is, and I've gone through many periods where I start and stop and start and stop. And, the past 2 years has been a lot of stopping and a lot of needing to fight the fear of starting again, because it's there. I don't care that I've been painting and drawing and creating my whole life. That fear is a great, it's not even sneaky. I mean, it just shows up. And
It's front
um,
and center most of the time.
yeah, so, I think what I've found is actually some of it is through yoga practice, some of it is through my meditation practice, but I also have to say, I've been doing daily 15-minute workouts with Mama Strong over the past, I don't know how many years. And her message is do it ugly and start again. And that really has touched me so deeply because you do really have to just keep starting again.
couldn't couldn't end better that way. I think you really just have to keep doing it. And each time like you said, each time I have that stopping period, and then I go back into the studio and I'm looking at that canvas, I'm like, it's almost like I forget everything I've been doing. I'm like, I don't know how to do anything. I don't even know why I'm in here. I don't like, and then I look at it, I have one painting in my living room and I'm like, I don't even remember how I did that. Like, like I keep looking at it, I'm like, I want to do that again, but how the heck did I do it?
Hmm.
Because it's just so, you're just in it.
Hmm.
And so each time you go in front of that canvas, that fear is like, I might not do what I did before.
Yeah.
And I just have, it's like you said, it's going to be ugly. And then eventually it will work itself out.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much for this. I appreciate it. I miss seeing you on, for our jaunts and our workshops and stuff like that. So hopefully one day soon I get to meet up with you. I know Katrina has seen you. I'm jealous. Um, and I just want to say to everyone, thank you for watching. And if you don't know Jennie and you're not following her, get your butts over to her account and follow her and look at her beautiful Alice Neal-esque pet portraits, because I'm a big fan. And I know I will be asking for some portraits soon because I got two crazy dogs. And yeah, just go enjoy Jennie's work. Give her some love and support. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Jennie. Thank you so
Thank you, Megan. It was so good to talk to you.
much. So good to talk to you too. All right. This will be on a replay. So catch it if you didn't catch it now. All right. Bye, Jennie.
Bye.